Sound check. Check one, check two.
Hey, hey. You would think after 9 years of doing the show, I could introduce it correctly, but no. Still working on that one. How you doing, friend?
Pretty well, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Like I said, it's a bit chilly here in the southern hemisphere. We're a little bit cool.
hmm
I mean, nothing compared to what you experience up in Canada, but cool nonetheless.
Yes, and it's very hot here, so
Oh, is it?
we're in.
You're
Mm,
well
mhm.
into the summer months. What have
We
you?
are.
Because I think we had you on the show last year, didn't we? I think we've had you.
Sure.
I think we've had you on the show nearly every year for the last 6 or 7 years. You're like you're like a regular.
Sure. I'm a regular.
You're a regular. What have you been doing with yourself the last 12 months?
Last 12 months, yeah, since the last time we talked. Um, the voice ped undegree just finished up in June,
Yeah.
and I opened up my studio a little bit to doing some one-on-one voice lessons, sort of more traditional voice lessons, if you will, for the first time in 2 years, which has been really so wonderful, so much fun, and just like great to be sort of it's. I wouldn't say it's straight ahead teaching because I'm working with so many voice teachers. So it's definitely lots of well, I actually call them pedagogy infused voice lessons. So it's not that shocking that there's a lot of, pedagogy in them.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah.
Let's
So it's a lot of fun.
that probably gives us a good launch point because there will be people watching us today and listening as a podcast who don't know you directly. And of course, you are quite
Shocking.
shocking. You are quite well known in the international pedagogy world for your teaching of teachers and those sorts of things. Let's start by giving people a bit of an overview of what they keep using this word pedagogy. What does that mean? Because I think that'll create a nice platform for us to talk about today's subject.
Sure thing. Well, I mean, pedagogy, the way we use the term today and the way we sort of use it in contemporary learning, if you will, and certainly in the voice world, is we use it as a sort of catch-all term for the art of teaching, if you will, the science and the art of teaching, if you will. So we kind of use it as a catch-all term. That is not its origin, and that is certainly not in lots of educational, like pure educational realms. Pedagogy has a slightly different connotation and application, but in this world, when we say voice pedagogy, we are talking about, or pedagogy, if you will, we are talking about the art and science of teaching, or how to teach, basically.
Yeah, and yes, it's funny because when I received my doctorate, you usually have the keynote speaker for the ceremony, and they get up and give their 15 minutes worth of wisdom. The I can't remember who it was, but the wisdom that the keynote gave at my doctoral ceremony was how much he hated the word pedagogy.
Hilarious.
And here I was having just done a vocal pedagogy study, and anyway,
Just
um,
thanks,
that's
guy.
yeah, thank you. So let's, you know, vocal. You and I both come from almost in sense a chapter within time of teaching voice that was vocal pedagogy was kind of the thing, and it's not
Yeah.
to say that it isn't any longer, because it is, but you know seasons move on and the approach changes. And but how has your you know, your time in learning the art of teaching, but also that catch-all term that we apply, vocal pedagogy. How has that informed your own teaching of voice? Like what impact does that have?
And that's a really interesting observation about the fact that yes, pedagogy and voice pedagogy. I also have a degree in pedagogy. That it was at one point very much a sort of like at the fore. It was very much
The thing.
the cool new kid on the block, right?
Yeah.
And now it's very much It's now sort of a very much it's part of the culture now, a very much part of the culture, I would say. Very, when I first thought about doing the master's in voice pedagogy, I was maybe the third class to go through. I was the first person to get a doctorate in voice pedagogy from a Canadian university. So I was the first Canadian to get a doctorate in voice. And that's just really interesting. Yes, it is definitely part of the culture now, the idea of pedagogy and the idea of voice pedagogy. I think one of the movements forward, if you will, within the understanding of voice pedagogy and the way that we're talking about pedagogy is that we have more of an understanding that when we're talking about pedagogy, what we're talking about is actually how to teach and also how do we learn. So we're really sort of, those two kind of concepts are coming to the fore in terms of, I do a lot of work. My work is very much informed by classroom educational models, philosophies of classroom education, and bringing, in fact, I'm writing a book, in the middle of a book, which is all about bringing the educational philosophies and models that we use in classrooms and that classroom teachers are taught how to use, bringing those into the independent voice studio or any kind of one-on-one teaching. Because I have a degree in pedagogy, of course, but the actual voice pedagogy, and still to this day, much of what we sort of put under the umbrella of voice pedagogy is actually anatomy and physiology. So it's actually, here's what's happening in the voice, and here are the exercises you should use, and here's how to diagnose what's happening, if you will, and here's how to solve these problems. So it's a lot about anatomy and physiology rather than literally the art of teaching. Yeah. So we have missed, I think, that has been a missing component in our pedagogy degrees to a certain extent. There are definitely people who do not see that the same way as I do. There are definitely people who get a little bit annoyed or whatever, who are like I am so teaching how to teach when I tell them about the lyrics, Shannon. Like, yeah, okay, sure, but are you actually teaching how to teach? Like, do you understand learning and how to teach? So that is, and that's been something that's missing, like I said, in our pedagogy, and also something that happens with our classroom educators, as classroom educators do, well, in Canada anyway, I'm sure it's similar in Australia. Classroom educators do a practicum where they are observed and where they get into the classroom, and you have someone who is a veteran teacher observing your teaching and mentoring you through the teaching process. That does not happen. That is not a requirement for you to be a voice teacher. It's not even a requirement for you to do pedagogy. If you've done a pedagogy degree, I mean, I happen to have part of that in my pedagogy degree, and very luckily did in my undergrad, but like very few undergrad pedagogy classes have a mentored teaching aspect to the class. So that is not something that we actually get as a profession, or that's required as a profession. So who is out there teaching, and what are we teaching? Well, we're teaching the way we were taught, and which is, I mean, fine, we're doing the best we can. That's all good. But how much more efficient and how much more how much deeper could the learning be
Yeah.
if we understood how to, like, if we really actually understood that.
I think that having that knowledge around teaching, moves us from a zone of, well, let's just throw as much at the wall as we can and see what sticks, to being very targeted, very intentional, very systematic. And I think that speaks to the efficiency idea that I want to kind of now skew ourselves towards in talking about, how does this more refined, there'll be people that'll have problems with me using that word.
Oh, I know.
Should I be diplomatic and change the word? Probably, but I don't have time. Being more, more purposeful in our learning. How does that benefit the student? What is the kick on for the student?
So, and you said something about learn or sing smarter, not harder. And I'm actually learn harder, not smarter, right? Or whatever. Learn smarter, not harder, or whatever.
Yeah.
And the same with teaching. So that's part of the reason I do so many of the courses and classes that I do. And the Voice Ped Degree that is what we do. We get into each other's, we're in each other's spaces, we're in each other's teaching, and we are talking about pedagogy principles, why we're applying in these ways, and also taking a lot of the, let me squirrel a little bit. One of the main pain points for voice teachers who I talk to is we sense that our teaching is not as effective as it could be. We sense that the singers are not learning as effectively or deeply or efficiently as they could be. We sense this for whatever reason. And because we do not have an understanding of teaching, and because we haven't perhaps had that modeled either, excuse me, and because I think of some of the leftover sort of legacy of Western classical educational models, and of course doing Western classical voice degrees as well, that are so top down and so master apprentice and so teacher centered and so expert centered. What we think then is the reason that I'm not being as effective as I could be is because I don't know enough about how the voice works. So I don't know enough anatomy and physiology, because I can't diagnose right off the bat what's happening with that singer and then tell them how to change it.
Yeah.
And so that's the main pain point, right? So voice teachers come to me because they think that the reason that I'm not an effective teacher here, or the reason that they are not learning as well as I would like them to, is because I don't have enough anatomy and physiology information. Because the way I was taught is, you have something wrong with you. You are not singing the way that you would like to, the way that you are supposed to sing in order to do whatever you want to do, or in order to sound the way that the expert, tell you should sound. And so you are here paying all of this money for me, the expert, to tell you what to change, what to fix, what exercises to do, how to do them, so that you will sound the way that you are supposed to sound, so that you can get to your goals. Fine. That is an old system. That is a inherently teacher-centered system that is not my favorite, obviously, and it is not very good learning. I mean, it's very ineffective learning. It is an ineffective long-term learning strategy for singers. So that pain point then, where voice teachers inevitably are coming to me to do, for example, the Voice Ped Degree or other kinds of work. I do lots of one-on-one pedagogy coaching, but often, inevitably, I would say 95% of the time, voice teachers say to me, the first thing they say is, I don't know what to do when. I have a singer and I can't figure out how to change X, Y, Z. I don't understand what this sound means. And that's why they're here. That's why they are coming to me. And so then as we start to talk, and as we start to, we start to work together, and as we start to talk about teaching, and I start to, go through this lens of pedagogy, as we start to understand how to teach and how we learn, we start to get those principles being applied. Inevitably, the reframe becomes, first of all, are you sure it can be this easy? I feel like I'm not doing enough. Why am I having so much fun? Why is the singer now doing, like, why does it feel like it's no longer like my responsibility? Why does it feel like all I have to do is just be present with the singer and actually like listen? Like, why is it really this easy? Like, are you sure it's really this easy? And it can feel this good. And also all of this like deep, feeling of inadequacy or incompetence, or maybe I'm not good at my job, all of those things, those, natty little voices, they start to be very quiet because all of a sudden I realized that my job isn't actually what I thought it was. My job is not to be here to diagnose and tell a singer what's wrong and tell them how to do it. And in fact, I don't have to have a whole 400,000 exercises categorized so that I know exactly when to use them and how. In fact, if I am here present with the singer and I know some really fundamental questions to ask from this reframe of student-led, or from this reframe of I can trust the singer in front of me, and rather than focusing on what we need to fix, I'm going to focus on what is already there and how we build, and also what do they want to hear more of in their voice? How do we want to build toward what they want to hear more of or what their goals are? Suddenly my job is not about I have to listen so I can tell you what's wrong. I have to be able to hear exactly what's wrong. And I have to know whether the pharynx is open enough or not. And I have to know whether there's tongue tension or not. And I have to know, oh my God, what if I missed that their hips were locked? Like all of that goes. And then the learning is more effective. The learning is more fun. Everybody is safer. And singers don't have to be compliant anymore. And also I no longer have to either blame myself or the singer when whatever doesn't work, right? So what happens in the situation where I am like in charge of everything and then the singer doesn't get better? Well, they're just terrible students, obviously. They didn't do what I told them to.
Acknowledging that a student-teacher relationship is a relationship. It's not purely transactional, but there is transaction of information and knowledge and back and forth, not purely flowing one way. So we've talked there about the orientation of the teacher being comfortable to sit in the space and be with alongside the student. Let's swing. I'm almost in my mind. I see the Hollywood swing around of the camera, and now we're looking at it through the eyes of the student. I think there can be an expectation, and again, I'm wanting to really get to this idea of how do we get the most out of our learning and our practice as the singer. How do you think we can, as students of voice, make sure that we position ourselves well to empower that experience that we've just talked about from the angle of the teacher? Because it's got to be, because if the student comes in purely looking to sit at the feet of the guru, then what you're talking about is I would think is going to collapse, because there's going to be a mismatch, isn't there? A dissonance. What can we do as students?
Yes. So people, this is always a question that comes up, and as I'm working with voice teachers, they're saying, yeah, this is all well and good, but what if, is it not student led if I actually do the thing that they want me to do, which is to be that master apprentice relationship and just tell them what to do? Like, so the first of all, let me say, from the teacher point of view, which we will go back to student in a minute, but from the teacher point of view, please understand that as we as teachers are sort of moving through this process to become more student-led and to be more supportive of agency, singers are too, right? So the vast majority of the singers who you work with, and as you come in as a student, we are all coming out of this educational philosophy. We're all coming out of a culture where we pay our money, and so then we expect to get something in return, right? So that is the and many times we're coming to as a teacher because that teacher might specialize in something, or maybe maybe we're coming to a teacher because I just can't get my high notes going, and so that is something very specific that I am coming to you for, because I can't quite get that sound, or I can't get my mix, or I can't get my breath under me, whatever it is. So that very specific issue, if you will, is the thing I'm coming to you for. And if you're going to just keep telling me that I'm fine, or that I have it already within myself, that is not what I'm coming to you for. And that is also not student-led learning. So that is also, let me just say, that is not what I'm espousing. As a student, a couple of things to come in with. The one of the most agency supporting questions that both a teacher and a singer can ask themselves and of the teacher and of the student is, what do you want to hear more of? Meaning, I as a singer, rather than coming into the studio and saying, I have this problem I want to fix, I have this problem I want to fix, I can't get these notes, here are the things that are wrong, I want more of, and start to name the actual thing you want more of. As a teacher, the amount of times singers cannot actually name what they want more of, the only thing that they have in their mind is the thing that is wrong, and they can't articulate what it will feel like or sound like or look like when it is right. So this is what we want to start to move toward. And so the question, one of the most wonderful things you can do as a student is to come into a teacher. We'll talk about what to do if a teacher is not willing, but or some of the ways to know that you may not be with a teacher who is going to support you and support your agency. A couple of ways we can know that, but or support your learning in an effective way, is to be able to come into the lesson or the learning situation and say, what do I want more of? And what will it sound like, feel like, or look like when I get that thing? So rather than saying, I can't get high notes and I don't know how to get them, or I can only sing up to a B and everything above that is just locks. Okay, you're going to come in and say, I would love to be able to sing above a B with freedom. And I think when I have that freedom, it will feel like my throat is open. It will feel like almost inevitable. It'll maybe feel like I am floating. The sound might be really bright. The sound might feel or sound like gold, I don't know, necklaces or something. I don't know, whatever you want to say. And here is the part in my voice and or a song and or an exercise where I feel like it's the closest to what I want. So if you can come into your lesson and articulate in that way what you want, I, as the teacher now, all I have to do is build on the part where you were like, this is what I love, and this is the closest. And now we're going to be like, okay, let's just keep building on the thing that is the closest. Because I don't have to tell you when you're there now. Because because you've already articulated to me what it feels like, what it's going to sound like, what it will be like. You have something you are going toward that is generated for yourself, rather than me saying, okay, so when you get those high notes, it's going to feel really free, and you're going to have, it's going to feel like you have an open throat. It's going to feel, as soon as I, as the teacher, start to describe the experience for you before you have had it, I am now in charge of your learning. I would much rather work with you to have in charge of your learning in a way that is not as effective, is not going to lead to as effective learning.
Yeah.
You may learn it. We've done this for 1,000 years, and you will likely learn. It's not that you won't. However, the faster, deeper learning over which you have agency, and that you will be able to take from the lesson and into the practice room and continue to practice and work on, is if you discover it and you describe it to me. So you discover the thing, and I, as the teacher, my job is not to tell you what your experience was, but to support you to figure out what that experience was. So now you have the touchstone of that experience, so you can come back to it yourself. How many times have you been in a lesson? I remember this very clearly when I have had lessons where a teacher says to me two things. One, they'll say, yes, now you need to work on your appoggio, or now you should have more legato. Now it will feel like you have a string of pearls moving through your blah, blah, blah. This will feel like your whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'll try to make it feel that way. And then, 20 years later, I'm like, oh, to lead, right. I get what you mean now.
The string of pearls is a new one to me. I've not.
I had a teacher say that. Yes.
Really?
The string of the vowels are the string of pearls.
Okay,
they're like a string of pearls. Okay. Yes. Or the other one is you have a mountaintop moment, you have an aha moment. Lynn Helding calls it a performance shift. So you have a aha moment in the lesson. The teacher or the masterclass technician, whoever, says, yes, that was this, this, and this, because you did these 5 things. So now I go back to the practice room and I'm like, I cannot recreate that.
Yeah.
If the teacher or the masterclass technician had said, what did that feel like for you?
Yeah.
What changed for you? Do it 3 more times and tell me what changed.
Can you spend some time?
Now I can go back. Exactly. Now I can go back to my practice room and be like, I know when I'm at 75% of what I want. I know when I'm at 80. And you know what? I can trust that I can get to 80% if I want to, because I remember that it felt like whatever the XYZ thing was, right?
I want to affirm what you're saying with a yes, yes, yes in bold capital letters. I also want to acknowledge, though, that there are, and I experience this a lot with beginner singers.
Yeah.
Who I think need to even be schooled into that experience. And I find with a lot of my beginners that the process does start out by necessity as very transactional. Do X, Y, Z, step 1, 2, 3. We're going to step this out. And this is, I will be, fully revealing, this is how I teach, especially beginners, because it's almost like we need to prime the pump. We need to get ourselves into a zone where we can give expression to what you are highlighting there. And it's driven in part, and in fact, I think it's, I'm going to say his last name wrong. There's a really well-known music YouTube channel who's brilliant, Rick Beato. Anyway, he's very good, and he recently did a bit of a whingy post about the devolving of music appreciation amongst young people, driven by the zeitgeist of Spotify, where and I've noticed this. I've definitely noticed this. 20 years ago, I would sit with a student for the first time and say, "Who do you listen to?" and they would list off their top 5 singers, their top 5 favorite singers. Now I ask the same question, and we can't get out one, let alone 5. So, and it's not because they're not necessarily listening to music. They're not listening. They just don't know who they're listening to often. Not always, often. Anyway, he was getting into that. And I think that it's almost like, because of the moment in history that we are in, we do need to, as teachers, it's almost like we've had to go, what we thought was the beginning of the journey for many, we've actually got to take steps back even further and go, oh, okay, that's where you're starting from. Let's now go on that journey. But I love what you're saying. Yeah, go.
Let me offer that singers may not know, a learner may not know who they're listening to, but they know what they love. So when I'm asking those kinds of questions, who are you listening to these days? What's at the top of your playlist? And they're like, I don't know. I put on Spotify and I end up listening to a playlist that was generated for me by Spotify. And it had some good bops. Amazing. What did you love about it? What brings up the feels in you? Let's start. And they may not be able to answer. And that is absolutely fine.
And that's the point, right? Often, to start with, and this is the priming that we, I think, often have to take students through to start identifying, obviously with Spotify, the algorithm is serving that stuff up to you because of it's learnt you like it because you keep listening to it. Or it could be just simply that you're in an echo chamber and,
which I am fine. Like, I'm fine with. I mean, so the priming to me looks more like offering options. So my assumption. So there are 4 stages. In some educational circles, we talk about four stages of student-directed learning, and our understanding as voice teachers often, especially when we hear like we're supposed to be student-led, blah, blah, is that we're supposed to already be at the 4th stage, but no, students are very rarely coming in at the 4th stage of learning, where we are in this purely sort of coach kind of, consultant kind of phase, versus the 1st stage, which is baby bird, right? Like, for most people, most students are coming in, regardless of chronological age or experience, are coming into the studio at that sort of 1st stage of learning, that baby bird phase. And that's absolutely fine. And when we don't understand that there is a progression to this, that we can build this out, which is what we're talking about, it with offering those like options and maybe taking a step back in terms of where the starting point is, as you were talking about. We often will keep people at, first of all, we will get frustrated with trying to do student-led learning because we're like, well, how did that feel? And they're like, I don't know. Well, of course they don't know. No one has ever asked them to think about how their body feels before. No one has ever told them that they get to choose what songs they want to sing in a lesson. No one has ever told them that they get to like things for specific reasons and that they can start to articulate that. No one has ever told them that they get to ask for something else in their voice, right? Of course they can't answer those questions. That is, and neither should they be. We get frustrated with student-led learning because, well, they never say what they like about anything. Of course they don't. Yeah. You're starting at 4 when you should be starting at 1. Yeah. And the other thing that we get stuck in is we get stuck in 1 as teachers often, right? Where we just stay in 1 because we think that's the way we're supposed to be teaching. We're constantly supposed to be just feeding them, rather than realizing, oh, that is the 1st stage of self-directed learning. That's the 1st stage of learning. That's not like wonderful, deeply fulfilling, exciting kind of learning. That is just where we start. And also, the farther along those stages of self-directed learning we get, the less responsibility and the less hard work it is for us as teachers, excuse me. Not that we get lazy, but the work it's a totally different kind of work. And it becomes this journey of learning together, right? So at that beginning stage, exactly what you're talking about in terms of the options, when I say, how did that feel? Or what do you love? When I say, like, what do you love about the music? They are very often going to say, I don't know. I don't know what I love. So now I'm going to offer some options.
Yeah.
And I may not have they may not give me any answers yet. All I'm doing is seeding it. I'm just throwing out the seeds. So they start to get in their mind, oh, wait, I have choices here.
Agency.
What do you know?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Yeah, I can make some choices. They may not be able to make a choice or articulate what felt different to them in their body for a year. They may not. Fine. You're not going to leave them in that little spot where you are 100% responsible for their learning for the rest of their lives, are you? No, you're going to continue to seed. And some of the seeding, like I said, are some of the options offering. What do you love about your current playlist or whatever Spotify is giving you? Is it the rhythm? Do you find it exciting? Does the music make you want to like sing along? Does it make you want to dance along? Is Spotify giving you a ton of music that makes you feel like you want to like cocoon in your bed and be alone from the world? That's also awesome. What about that music makes you want to cocoon and get alone get alone? What about the music makes you like you're the teacher. Your job isn't to tell them what they feel, but your job is to get them thinking about it so they can figure out like that's why we're the experts in the room.
Yeah.
Because I can offer you all of these options so that you can start to think about my choices, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm the expert. I'm not the expert to tell you what you feel.
This is what Trinice Robinson refers to as the soul ingredients, right? Trinice is going to be coming onto the channel later in the year again. Like you, she's a regular, and we'll be talking about that. I want to just think about. And now I've lost my train of thought. Now that I was being also very clever and mentioning something that will be happening in the future, I forgot about talking about right now.
Just seeding things.
I know what I was going to ask you. I wonder if you could just talk us. You've referred to these 4 steps of directed learning, self-directed learning. Talk us through the 4 steps, if you would.
Sure. I'm not sure if I can remember the actual, there's actual categories for each one.
That's all right. We'll take the Dr. Shannon paraphrased version. Yeah,
the paraphrase, exactly. The 4 stages. Essentially, the first stage is we have lots of, I'm giving you lots of instructions. I'm giving you lots of, in teaching, I may not want to necessarily give you lots of instructions, but I'm going to give you, I may give you more words than I would later on, more explanations than I might later on. I may also be, I'm going to be very cognizant of seeding these kinds of agency sort of supporting questions and then offering lots of options. And then saying, let's just try some things out. Which one did you like? You know what? If you can't tell, that's great. Here was my favorite. Let's try that again. I mean, we're in that very much, they may not even have a reason for taking voice lessons, right? They may just be there because their mom wants them to take voice lessons, or they may be there taking voice lessons with no specific goal in mind or some kind of very like broad goal. I want to be on Broadway. Okay. I want to sing in a band. Okay. That's a very broad goal, right? So that may be the reason, so the level of the learning is very much like, I am Mother Bird. I'm just going to keep giving you these seeds. And the way that I'm seeding to get into that next level is, as we were talking about, just offering these options, starting to, really model that you have choices and that I'm going to keep asking these questions. At some point, I believe that you're going to start answering them. we're going to, and at some point, we're going to start to get to some more specific kinds of goals. So, like, you want to be on Broadway. Okay, what do you need to have in order to be on Broadway? How will you sound when you are on Broadway? What are the skills you need to acquire when you're on Broadway in order to get to Broadway, right? So that's the next step, is we move into a less feeding and a little bit more, I can't remember the exact names of the learners. There's really specific kinds of learners that each of these categories. The second one is,
I did put you on the spot. This was a question without notice. So, if
good, but you can see like the level of the learning basically moves through these stages, so that by the time you're at the fourth level of the self-directed learning, essentially this is the level where you've got singers coming into the studio who are saying to you, or learners who are coming in and saying to you, okay, here's what's happening. I would love to be able to do this a little bit better, and I want to change this thing. Here are the things I've already tried. Let's work together and get some more ideas.
Yeah.
So we're moving from tell me everything I need to know, tell me what's wrong with me, make sure that I'm singing, with this massive goal, all the way through these other stages of learning to where I have complete agency over my voice and over my instrument and over my learning. And I am now coming to you as a fellow expert.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the journey to that does take time. And if people are watching this and going, well, that's not where I'm at right now, that's okay. This is something we grow into. And I know there are, over the years, there are many students where, and this is in part why you need to stay. If you find a good teacher, stay with them, but stay with them for the long journey, because it does take time to get to that point, to move beyond the purely transactional to that exploration where you are exploring together. There is an equality to the exploration, driven by the fully endorsed agency of the student. Because at the end of the day, I've said to students, look, I'm when you leave the studio, I don't lose any sleep over what's happening with you. I care about you. I want to see the best for you, but you're the person that's going to leave the room with the voice, not me. And this is where we have to take ownership of our voice, don't we?
Yeah, I think understanding as a student or as a learner that the learning process comes over time. We often have this sort of urgency and expectations around how fast I should be changing and what progress looks like, so we don't, in that way, we don't understand learning. We also often, as learners, have this expectation that once I've done the final test, then I will have learned it. So we have a very misguided understanding of how to assess learning. So that is also something that I think is useful for us as learners to start to understand as well, is asking these questions. Of course, what do I want to hear more of in the voice, and how will I know? What will it feel like? But also start to ask, how will I know that this teacher is the right teacher for me? Like, you're allowed to start to ask those questions as a learner. And obviously there are always, there's always other things going on, and there's lots of different parameters, but some of the things that may be useful to ask yourself, how will I know when I have learned the thing that I want to learn? So even if I'm coming in, even if my even if I'm coming in saying, I want to sing in a band, and that's your goal, okay, the question to come in with is, how will I know that I am ready to sing in a band? And I may not know that yet as the learner. I may not have that information. But the teacher, that is a question that you can start to ask yourself in terms of how effective this teacher is for me and whether or not I'm learning it. Is that teacher working with me so that I know what I need to know in order to be able to accomplish that goal? And also, is that teacher supporting me so that I will know when? Because if the only way that I will know when I'm ready to sing in the band is when the teacher tells me I am, that may not be maybe the greatest teacher on the planet for you. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm saying that is something to ask yourself if you want to be a self-directed learner who can come back to a teacher as a fellow expert on your learning, rather than having to go to that teacher every week for the rest of your life in order to be told whether you can sing or not. Yeah. Those are two very different relationships. Then you can ask those questions. If you want to be the learner who comes back every week for the rest of your life in order to be told whether or not you're singing right, fine. That is exhausting for me as a teacher. I do not want to be that. I do not want to be your teacher. That is exhausting. But there are teachers out there who want to be that.
It comes back though, doesn't it, to, and I think, because I know that you and I both view this through the same lens, it is removing the guru. Like the moment you remove... Yes. And the moment you remove the idea of guru teacher, you recognize that no one teacher can give you everything you are going to need along your journey. You are going to be the sum total of your parts as you travel along. And I often say to students, I'm going to accompany you on your vocal journey for a period of time. I've been doing this for 30 years. I do not have one student who has been with me for 30 years. That would be ridiculous. And I think you'd be questioning what's going on there. And so when we recognize that there is no one individual who can give you everything, and you take agency, then that does give you permission to go, thank you. This has been wonderful. Thank you for the journey we've traveled together. I'm now going to step on to my next chapter. And then we turn the lens back to the teacher and go, and then the teacher has to be mature enough in their own existence to go, thank you for allowing me to journey with you for this period of time. And I, hope and that what we've done together has empowered you, enhanced what you do. And yeah, so I think if I can, because we do have to wrap up, I think if we can think about recognizing that it is a relationship. It's not transactional. And I don't know how well we've actually done in ticking off the box of, sing smarter, or like you said, learn smarter, not harder. But I do think if we apply that layer to what we've talked about today, it is about that the way we orientate into a learning space. Yes. Yeah. And both the teacher and the learner. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important for you to get the most out of the time that you have with that particular person for that particular period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's the reframe. Absolutely. And the sort of deconstruction, if you will, of that master apprentice model, and of the, I have to, this teacher is going to fix my problems, and so this is why I'm taking lessons, right?
Yeah.
So that is a very different model than I want to, or a different philosophical even lens than I am with. Then I am coming to this teacher to deepen my learning.
Yeah.
And this teacher is going to be with me on the learning journey and offer me options. And the reason I'm going to this teacher is because they've got lots of options to offer versus they are going to tell me what to do. These are two different ways of being in the studio and being a learner. Like these are,
to say it a
they're
little
fundamental.
To say it the same thing a slightly different way, we are advocating for an internal locus of control where there is an ownership and not placing the responsibility. Now I'm talking from the learner, not placing the responsibility of the learning on the teacher. That we take our own responsibility, which is a challenge for some people because 2/3 of the population, certainly here in Australia, have an external locus of control, and so this can be a challenging thing for some people.
Well, and our entire educational system, Western educational system, is set up with an expert apprentice or a model, right? Like, I'm the teacher, I'm going to tell you what you're going to learn, here are the learning outcomes, here's how you're going to learn it, and here's how I'm going to tell you whether or not you learned it. So here's your test, so I can mark you on whether or not you learned it. So that, I mean, everything about our educational system is that I am the expert, therefore I will tell you what you're supposed to do, and not only that, but I will assess whether or not you did it. Or how about if I tell you what I'd like to learn and you help me to figure out how to self-assess whether I have learned it? How about that?
How about that? And on that, guess what we have to do? We have to finish. I know. The time goes quick, right? And I know, once again, I didn't say to you at the beginning, once again, I know how late it is where you are. What time is it currently?
It's almost midnight.
You're a champion. Thank you. Hey, we did it again.
Champion.
Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for chatting, everyone. I hope everyone's able to really garner, something that will lead them down the road of more efficient learning. Because it's time is so limited for people now. I know time is limited for me. And I know I'm like the rest of us, like it's limited. And so when we are doing what we're doing, we want to make sure we get the most bang out of our buck. And these things that we have been talking about today will and can bring about efficient learning, which can only be a good thing, I would think. Yeah.
And what they call in sort of educational circles, transferable learning. Right? This is transferable, meaning if I learn how to learn a thing here and how to assess that I've learned a thing, I can do that in so many other areas of my life.
Yeah.
So then the learning becomes the thing that is the most important versus now I have the skill of singing.
Well, these things transfer into lifelong learning, don't they?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So good to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for bringing me in to talk about my favorite thing.
Oh, we love having you. We love having you. See you soon.
Take care.
So there you go, folks. Another great hangout with Dr. Shannon, and she's a champion, isn't she? She's already gone. Wow, man, she clicked off. I hope you've enjoyed today's live hangout. Hit the thumbs up button if you have. I hope you have. It kind of took an angle that I didn't expect, but I'm really glad we took and approached the topic from, because I thought that was, I found it interesting, and I hope you did as well. Next week, I didn't check, but I'm pretty sure we're doing a Q&A again next week. So make sure you like and subscribe and do all those things, just so you know that we're going live. We do it every 1 p.m. every Monday. And so I very much look forward to seeing you again next week, when you'll always hear me sign off every show with, I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.